for purposes of, pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A1, which is any discussions of job performance, character, or physical or mental health of a person or persons, provided that person has been notified in advance in writing in advance that they may require that the discussion be held in an open meeting, and they have. Rhode Island General Law 42465A2, sessions pertaining to potential litigation / legal advice, which is John Doe's 1-3 versus Aaron Thomas. 42465A4, which is discussion of any investigative proceedings regarding allegations of misconduct, either civil or criminal. If I could have a motion.
So moved.
A motion from Ms. Hildebrand. Second, Mr. Mather. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so motion passes unanimously. We're going to be in executive session to return at approximately 7 p.m. Thank you. All right, you guys all set? Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call our meeting to order. Today is the 15th of December, 2021. This is a business meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee. If I could ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Greg Boswell.
Here.
Lisa Hildebrand.
Here.
Jennifer Hoskins. Jennifer Lima. Jake Mather.
Here.
Sally Schott. Here. Brooke Thompson. Gabriel Anthony.
Thank you. And if you could please call the calendar.
Tuesday, January 11, 2022, School Committee Business Meeting. Tuesday, January 25th, 2022, School Committee Business Meeting.
Thank you. So first item on our agenda, we just have two brief presentations this evening regarding the high school program of studies as well as the ESSER 2 update. So I'll turn things over to Dr. Mansieri first just to do a little bit of information about where things are progressing with ESSER 2 funds. Oh, did I do it backwards?
No.
Oh, I did it backwards. Sorry. All right.
No worries.
Sorry. I wrote it backwards.
We'll do this first, then I'll do the recognitions. Okay. So, good evening, everybody. Back on November 16th, I presented an overview of the RICAS data on providing a follow-up of ESSER spending that falls in line to improve our students' achievement gaps. So the ESSER 2 spending, fully adopted high-quality curricula in grades K through 8 in math and literacy. Math at the high school is piloting, and our English department is working on a waiver. We're implementing MTSS, a tiered framework that supports all students in academic needs during this school year. Fully running at K through 8, and the high school is engaging in the pre-work to implement in the next school year. We've hired a total of 5 FTEs under ESSER 2 for our multi-tiered system of support. And Tier 1 of the framework is a universal core curriculum mentioned above. Tier 2 is targeted small group interventions implementing the What I Need Now block at the elementary schools for both acceleration and remediation. And Tier 3 is individualized interventions based on student needs. The reading specialists at the middle school level were recently trained in Orton-Gillingham. It falls under the science of reading. They will use this, and we applied for and received the Rethink RI grant, which provides Lexia, which is a computer software, and lesson plans for Tier 3 students in grades 6 through 8. At each middle school, we also have math teachers who are so supportive of helping our students that when we couldn't find an interventionist, they volunteered to work an additional class to provide Tier 3 support. DMS has begun, and WMS will start at the beginning of the second semester, and that is being paid through ESSER 2. ESSER 2 is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. The amendment period closed this month. Any additional funds not spent this fall were allocated to the Science of Reading and the Right to Read Act, which was legislated back in 2019. The guidance was provided from Rhode in 2021, and we're training our teachers following this guidance. North Kingstown School Department had 2 early adopter cohorts that participated in the state letters training program in 2021 and 2020. The letters is language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. This year we have 8 teachers, reading specialists and interventionists joining and training for the science of reading. And as stated above, 2 middle school reading specialists were trained in Orton-Gillingham. Coming up in the spring of 2022, we begin awareness training for our secondary level teachers in grades 6 through 12 and all speech and language pathologists, school psychologists, and social workers. Next fall, the remainder of the teaching staff will begin proficiency training, and the teachers in the spring and fall will be training over 2 years. Finally, the ARP ESSER, or what Rhode is calling ESSER 3, which is the American Rescue Plan, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. The application is open. It's been open, and we'll be engaging the community to get stakeholder input. Tomorrow, a survey will be sent for feedback from community members, parents, students, teachers, staff, and administrators. It will be open until the Monday after Christmas. The link for the survey will be on our website and sent out through email and other social media. This will also be an agenda item at the PTSO meetings in the month of January. And that is it for this update.
Thank you very much. Any members of the committee have any questions? Nope. Okay.
Continue with the rest of
Yep.
Okay. So now we do have some recognitions, which is always so exciting to do. For the STEM and the CS4RI, which is the Computer Science for Rhode Island initiative, the elementary media specialists have been trained on the Project Lead the Way launch computer science modules and pedagogy. This happened on October 29th and again on November 2nd. The portal is set up and the students will be rostered. And equipment for each school in grades K through 3 is arriving. Grade 4 is software only and the same for grade 5 for now. The media specialist will continue to plan with Jess Rodriguez, who is the lead curriculum coordinator for the library media specialists. And it looks like we are on schedule to implement this January instead of next fall. We are excited to offer this program to our students, which will combine kinesthetic approaches to our computer science curriculum in order to instruct the computational thinking skills. Rick Powell is our district STEM coordinator, and in concert with Jess Rodriguez, who I just told you was the library media specialist coordinator, presented to the committee back in 2020, you may recall. And I want to invite them back in the spring so they can update us again on their progress. And I just want to commend them and recognize them for their planning and reaching this next goal post with CS4RI. And finally, for me, before I hand it over to Dr. Auger, is the North Kingstown High School 2021-2022 All-State Musicians. We are so proud to announce that 52 North Kingstown High School musicians were selected for this year's All-State Ensembles. I would also like to highlight that we have number 3 ranked in the state. And so I'm going to read those. It's Benjamin Monaco on the trombone, Zachary Goulet on the bass, and Chelsea Gartland on the alto. Then we also have 7 ranked number 2 in the state, and that's Braden Blanchett, tuba, Sandia Scott, viola, Zachary DiBiase, alto sax, Emily Donnelly, soprano, Drew Cardos, tenor, Quinn Kennedy, jazz trumpet, and Caroline Ranucci, bari sax. And finally, we have 6 ranked number 1 students on their instrument in the state of Rhode Island. It's Jenna Clark on the cello, Ian Glover on euphonium, Rory Lang, jazz bass, Rory Lang again, double bass, Peyton Barlow, double bass, and Tyler Vellucci, jazz alto sax. That's Norma Kayaza, Brenda Youngrunner, and Tony Silvera's students. I just can't say enough. This is why we need to do everything we can to rebuild the music programs in our district and the band, string, and chorus. Congratulations on all these honors. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to announce that 2 weeks ago, we had a full house here for 97 North Kingstown High School students who were inducted into the National Honor Society. It was a great occasion. It's what this auditorium ought to be used for, people celebrating their kids' academic success. Congratulations to these students and for their academic achievement, but also for their commitment to upholding the ideals of the National Honor Society. It was a great night. Also, I asked Mr. Cobain to provide us with, we're at the end of the fall season, just had some championship teams, and I want to acknowledge them. First and foremost, the Unified Volleyball Division II state champions. Congratulations to them and Coach Keith Higgins. The girls cross country state open champions, first time in 21 years. Congratulations to them and Coach McNeese. Football Division I state champions, third time in 4 years. Coach Fran Dempsey for that. And girls soccer Division I state champions, first time in 26 years. That's Coach Mark DeRizo. We also had girls volleyball. Unfortunately, they lost for the first time in 5 years versus South Kingstown in the D1 semifinals. Boys soccer, D1 state runner-up to LaSalle. And boys and girls cross country qualified and competed in the New England's, and they both placed in the top 10. We've had several first and second team all-state athletes, all division, all league. Too many to mention tonight, unfortunately. And they also ran a very successful canned food drive the night of the Dick Fossa field dedication, and that was really nice to be a part of that too. So a really nice season by the athletic department, and congratulations to all who participated.
Thank you. And then we have a presentation regarding the updated high school program of studies.
Help is on the way. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shivali Finkelstein, and I'm the assistant principal at North Kingstown High School for Teaching and Learning. I'm very happy to give this presentation in person. I remember doing this online last year, so I'm glad to be here tonight. I also have Mr. Rich Sweetman with me, who is a department chair for science, and he will be presenting the updates for the science. So I'm going to start with the cover section. The graduation requirement, as you know, the financial literacy piece is already in place for North Kingstown High School. So the first piece that is an update is we highlighted that under the graduation requirement for 2024 and kind of cleaned up the language a little bit around that. We still have the 3 courses listed in the program of studies that identifies as financial literacy credit for that particular section. The second piece is we added some math tier intervention lab supports that we have for our students under special services. So we noticed as we were auditing the program of studies that we have lots of literacy and numeracy support for our students that are tier 2 and tier 3, but we did not have the language spelled out, so we added the math acceleration lab that we support students with, and there is flexibility for those students to move in and out depending on the support they need. Before I go into each department changes, I just want to also highlight that we changed the format. You may have noticed we changed the format of program of studies over the years as we used the Microsoft Office program. It became very clunky over the years as we added information. So while we really liked that format when we started, it kind of became a little less reader-friendly. So we received a lot of feedback from our community about our newsletter and the format of what we use, and they wanted it to be a little bit more user-friendly. So you'll notice that we have changed the format to be a little bit more cleaner and a little bit more tabular format. I'm going to go over some career changes. We have updated our course description for some of our career programs, and they are to reflect the update in the curriculum they have had over the few years. So what they notice is there's some new requirements for certification or curriculum updates that were not reflected over the years. So we just changed some of those, and I have for you the old and new descriptions that are provided to you in that summary. And as you can look, if you look through the old and the new format, you can probably see what I'm talking about when it comes to formatting the program of studies. Okay. I did want to highlight the AP Computer Science Principles, Cybersecurity, and all of the computer science courses that were under the career programming are now receiving dual enrollment credit from URI. So we wanted to make sure that that's included. We still use the Project Lead the Way curriculum, but this is new for URI to accept that as credit to URI. So the students can now receive 4 college credits to URI for any of those courses they take with us. All right. English Language Arts. We have a new model for our ELL programming at the high school. So we have always had ELL instruction happening in isolation. So we always had our ELL teacher give specialized instruction in a separate setting. So this year we did actually change the model, and the teacher is able to go into classrooms, and so the students don't have to have an ELL section it's blocking their course. They have the opportunity to take other electives, and the ELL teacher instead visits their classrooms and helps and provides the ELL services in a regular ed setting. So there's more mainstream for students. And so we changed the language for our ELL programming. We removed the 3 sections of ELL that we had, and we added some language that talks about how the service is now being delivered. Under Fine Arts, we had some basic edits, just some descriptions were updated. And so what you are seeing is just the old and the new course description for our digital design, ceramics, and ceramic studio. Under math, we had two changes. We removed a course, the Statistics and Calculus CP course. We removed that course due to low enrollment, but the students still have access to taking statistics and calculus as two separate courses. This particular course allowed them to take the two courses at once with 2 credits. So, but there was a very low enrollment, and so we removed the course. But again, like I said, the students can still access those 2 courses separately. One of the new additions to math was we added Algebra 2 Everyday course, and we did that in anticipation of the secondary regulations that are being proposed by Rhode Island Department of Education to have all students at the high school meet Algebra 2 requirements before they graduate. So we kind of did that in anticipation of that coming down. We want to be prepared, and we want to have 1 year, we want to be ahead by a year or two when we do have to work with the students that come to us next year and have to take Algebra 2. So this has the interventions for students built in. So it will still be Algebra 2, but it will be a course that the students would take every day to ensure they're prepared and can handle the course. Finally, before I turn it over to Mr. Sweetman, world languages, we have a small change. The students that come from middle school have the option to either take Spanish 1 again at the high school level because it was a middle school course and they don't feel prepared. So our introduction to Spanish is going to now be a Spanish 1 course, and the students that are prepared will just move on to Spanish 2. So we had this Spanish 1B, which was almost like in between. We kind of eliminated that and cleaned it up to say their students will take Spanish 1 or Spanish 2. And I will hand this to Mr. Sweetman, and then we'll be here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you to the ladies and gentlemen of the school committee, Dr. Roger and Dr. Mansouri. I got 4 items that I wanted to share with you this evening that was developed with the entirety of the science department. We spent some time in the spring, actually, in anticipation of this, because I felt it was important that all of the students that are at North Kingston High School should have options available to them, and to know that this is part of the continuum of their journey as they move on to wherever they go from beyond these walls. And I think sometimes that students get so focused on where they are right now that they lose, that we forget that as well, and that to show that there's going to be something coming afterwards, and we want to make sure that we have supported them in making decisions for themselves which they can be proud of. The first item is a lateral movement of students who, for one reason or another, ended up in a college prep course and are looking to move into honors track. There is, much like every course that's offered at North Kingston High School, there's always other supporting courses, and one of those was to make sure that students were supported in math, because in the track that students are on, we do a little bit of math in the freshman level sciences. Once they get into biology, we don't really have as much math content. It's more of memorizing, and so students can do really well. And then once we get to chemistry, where, as I put it, because I'm a chemistry teacher, I'm math and a foreign language in one, right? So we have to, so students are like bombarded with these different terms and different numerical equations that they have to decipher. So we wanted to make sure that students who wanted to make that transition were supported, and to know what the skills that they were needed in order to be successful continuing on. So that's the first change that we had. Second is I would say replacement. During COVID, we did not offer the science placement exam, which, if some of you would recall, we were offering exams to 8th grade students on the next generation science standards, Earth and Space science standards. And there's a variety of reasons that can go into what caused it to cease. However, that would then leave options for students who had proclivities in the sciences to be able to excel. And so we, as a department, developed a a system that students could utilize if they wanted to maximize the number of AP Science courses they wanted to take, which is why you would accelerate in the sciences, that they could double up on certain sciences in their freshman year, or in their sophomore year. I'm sorry, I misspoke there. And that would then lead to giving them more credit options or more scheduling options in their 11th and 12th grade. I felt it was very important, and I'll give a shout out to all of the science teachers in North Kingstown School District, from the middle school teachers up into the high school, for the NGSA scores which just came out, which hopefully you're aware of, and we did extremely well in those. And I think that part of that reason is because of that test, it includes standards which we were testing on for the 8th grade, and I wasn't confident that all of those standards were being reached on that. So I reasoned that students need to be exposed to that content area. We cover a lot of good, like up-to-date problems that people are facing in the world and with respect to science. So we wanted to make sure that students were getting those standards and were taught so that we're better prepared for that test, because I felt if they weren't prepared, we would see the result of it in those test scores. So that was the second part that I want to share tonight. Third is actually it was re-added, because this work that is the career fields and aligning career fields. Rick Powell had actually done some of this work in the 2015-2016. I can find the document on our website. And I felt it was part, as I said in my opening remarks, the continuum, that once students leave here and want to consider a career that they might not know right now, but some students do. So I wanted to align, the department wanted to align sequences that students could take that would prepare them for those particular course fields. We prepare all students with whatever they want to do in life, because as we all know, it changes. But I felt if they were heading in a direction that they wanted to be, were thinking about as a career, that we offered them a sequence of courses that they would consider, so they could kind of see and plan themselves out as they move through our curriculum. And none of these are only suggestions at this point, but I think that we're showing the students that we're thinking beyond our four walls for how we're preparing them. And I can't stress that enough, that when a student who's sitting in my classroom, I'm a stepping stone to them. I'm thinking about, where are you heading next? What can I do to make sure you can use this course and this institution to be able to move on to the next level, so that you have those good foundations. And I think this represents that. And as with everything with this program of studies, we do it every year, and we come in every year. But it's a continuum to make sure that we're continuing to grow and to adapt, and to making sure that this exciting world that we're in right now is that we are adapting as well, and we're cognizant of it, to allow those students to have the skills, or to give those students the skills so they can survive. Finally, it was more of a bookkeeping part. There was a change in the way that the College Board designed their AP Physics curriculum. They split it into an AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2 is their name for it. Those courses are not sequential. They can be taken. One is to do with algebra-based mechanics, and the other one is waves and electromagnetism. And those, you can do one or the other in either sequence. And so we just changed the wording on it to reflect that a student who might have more interest in engineering things versus electronics, they could choose one or the other and not feel they had to do one before the other, and therefore, I would say, waste their time, but they could be focused more where they wanted to be. So in conclusion, that's what I have for tonight, and myself and Mrs. Finkelstein will entertain any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. I just want to comment that I'm really excited to see this path for the different fields that the students might want to take. I think that's awesome. I love the fact that it would prepare them if it's something that they wanted to do in college or a career. So thank you for thinking that through. I think that's great. And the other thing was the addition of the Algebra 2. I think that's a much needed support for students. So thank you for putting that in there.
Any other questions? Yep. Ms. Hildebrand?
Can you explain the foreign language part again? Because I know that there were some changes several years back at the middle school level around Spanish, and you did mention that you were changing the way that the language is listed. So can you just explain that one more time?
Yeah, sure. So we had Intro to Spanish, and then we also had Spanish 1B, and then we also had Spanish 2. So it just seemed like too many levels. We just wanted to kind of simplify it and say if the students have taken Spanish at the middle school and they are ready to go to Spanish 2, they can just take Spanish 2. If they are not ready to take Spanish 2 and they feel like their skills are not there, now instead of trying to separate them into who takes Intro to Spanish and who takes 1B, we're just giving them a comprehensive Spanish 1 course, and we just updated the curriculum to reflect that, if that makes any sense. It just seemed like too many levels.
Okay, that makes sense. So are we confident that by combining the 1B and the intro together, that's still going to meet what the students' needs are coming out of the middle school for those that aren't ready for Spanish 2?
Right, so they have updated a little bit of their curriculum to make sure that they will be ready to take Spanish 2 the following year.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation.
I'd just like to also congratulate you. You know, North Kingstown High School has an incredibly comprehensive list of course offerings. Never seen anything like it, and because we're a pretty large school, we're able to do that, where a number of other schools may not be able to offer as much. There's just not enough students there to take as wide variety of courses. So it's a lot of work to stay on top of that and to make the adjustments year to year. Every year there's, good dozen things or so that need to be adjusted to meet the needs of, students wherever they're at. And I really appreciate all the work tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll make a comment I say it every time we do this, but I'll say it again. When you read through that program of studies, it looks much more like a community college catalog than it does a high school catalog. And it never ceases to amaze me, the opportunities that we're able to provide. And I'm so pleased to see that. And I want to thank you all for the hard work. I've been doing this long enough to have seen a number of iterations of how that document was done. And the electronic one that's more fluid that we have now is a great improvement over it just gives you a lot more flexibility than we used to have and links and things like that. So I think great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to add one last thing. I want to give a shout out to our clerk for teaching and learning at the high school, because she literally retyped the whole program of studies to make the format better. It was just not friendly to even copy paste. So that told us it's time to revise it. And I just want to give her a big shout out. She started the project in the summer because she knew she was typing 200 plus pages. So I did want to recognize her efforts. And we have excellent TAs and secretaries without whom we wouldn't do the work we do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks to them as well. So next item on the agenda, we have citizens' comments. I have the first set of the list. We do, if you want to run down and get on there, you can. First person who is signed up, just a reminder, we do ask that you please limit your comments to 3 minutes. I have a light here to help you with that. If it turns red and then shuts off, that means that your 3 minutes have gone by, and we'd ask if you could please wrap up at that point. First person, and also I'll just remind you, if you could all, when you get to the microphone, please state your name and address, including your town. A lot of people have streets but not towns on here, so I will stop you if you hadn't said that so that I can fill that in. So the first person who signed up is Nolene Thompson, please, and followed by Kathleen Layton.
Noeline Thompson, 5 Seagrass Way in North Kingstown. Can you hear me?
It's a little quiet. Maybe pull it a little closer. Yep, thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
In last Monday's a joint meeting between the town council and the school committee, 2 council members proposed freezing the school committee's fund balance until the Aaron Thomas investigations are completed. First, it was for the kids' sake. Then, it was because the town council needed to set aside funds for the terrible lawsuits that were coming. Then Mr. McKay suddenly pivoted and suggested another reason. He claimed that this fund balance must be frozen because those funds are being spent on activities initiated by the DEI subcommittee. Disagreement about how to spend taxpayer money is fair in a democracy. What's not fair or constructive is the suggestion that people who disagree with you, especially elected officials of the other party, are acting to advance some culturally dangerous, un-American, or unpatriotic agenda. On the surface, Mr. McKay and others claim that racism doesn't exist in North Kingstown. Therefore, spending taxpayer money to search for it is an outrageous waste. Sounds rational, but the intensity of the personal attacks against Ms. Lima and the fury that has been directed her way suggests to me that some people are quite threatened by this inquiry. I personally find it pretty disgusting to suggest that Ms. Lima has some nefarious, even un-American agenda. In my opinion, Ms. Lima's critics have crossed a line. So what's going on here? What's fueling all this outrage? From my perspective, it's a couple of things. First, I believe Ms. Lima and the school committee, you've all stepped into a hornet's nest. North Kingstown's a pretty nice place to live. However, nice doesn't mean perfect or that there's no room for improvement. And I, for one, would like to see more diversity in this community. I also think it's naive to believe that there aren't some structural barriers, both in our schools and in our community, that work against more diversity and equity. But if you don't look for these barriers, it's pretty easy to convince yourself they don't exist, and that the status quo is just fine. I believe it took real courage for Ms. Lima and the entire school committee to follow your judgment and set a course for looking at diversity and equity in our schools. The second thing explaining these attacks is that the 2022 elections have begun. Democrats hold a majority in both the town council and the school committee. Or they did, and up until last summer, I would have suggested that most of these people had good prospects of getting reelected unless some horrific issue came up that could be found to convince people that you cannot trust Democrats, or worse, that you cannot trust your children to the decisions made by a Democratic school committee. The recall failed, mask wearing didn't take off, and curriculum material sensitive to LGBTQ individuals didn't seem to stoke enough anger. Then eureka, the Aaron Thomas mess came into focus. Like most of you, I think that what happened with Coach Thomas was horrible. I want to see the truth come out and people who were responsible
I do need you to wrap up, please.
held accountable. But they deserve due process, not vigilante justice. More important, in the rush to judgment, I don't think that the Aaron Thomas mess is a reason to distrust all school committee members, all teachers, and especially Democratic elected officials. So I'm urging my fellow citizens not to be fooled or manipulated by sleazy political tactics or xenophobic thinking. Your anger about Aaron Thomas is justified, but don't let people leverage that as a justification.
I need you to wrap up, please. Sorry.
For attacking people who have the courage to raise uncomfortable issues in our schools and town. We're better than that. And Ms. Lima and the entire school
If you could
committee
please wrap up. Thank you.
deserve from us, better from us, the people you're trying to serve.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. My timer's on the fritz, so we're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. My apologies. Next is Kathleen Layton.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Layton, and I live at 17 Pilgrim Drive in North Kingstown. I believe victims, and I am troubled by the Coach Thomas stories. I also know that there are 3 investigations being conducted about this matter, and I have trust that in time, these 3 investigations will lead our divided community to the truth. What I don't understand, much like the previous speaker, is how the Coach Thomas story relates to many other subjects it's being associated with. Our students in our community need money for our schools. And I believe victims, and I also believe that perhaps there is a local political agenda that is using alleged victim stories for their own political agenda, and that saddens me. We come to these meetings every few weeks, often discuss controversial topics that are filled with anger. there was a failed attempt to recall Jen Lima, a wonderful public servant. That failed. There have been angry calls to end masks, and as we sit here with COVID numbers rising, thank you for not heeding that call. That also failed. And now we all sit here and listen to a group that I affectionately call the book banners, who want to ban books from a public high school library, high school students in a public high school. They're calling this book pornography, a common accusation against work with themes of queer sexuality. We've seen the pictures that are here tonight. It's no longer shocking. It's called oral sex. That's what it's depicting, and it's okay. It's okay. Pornography. Thank you, Ramona. Thank you. So the angry book banning has also gone nowhere, thanks to our highly educated and progressive thinking school committee. Thank you. So why do we sit here? I suppose it's for the children, right? For the boys, as the book banners proclaim. So here's a thought. Coach Aaron Thomas also has children. Many of the school committee's members up there who are being called horrible names all year, they have children also. So can we please let justice take its course? I hate to think that alleged victims are being used for a local political agenda. In closing, I want to share a public service warning to everybody here. In my pursuit against banning a book that I feel is incredibly important to be in a public high school library, a community member, I'm not sure if she's in the audience tonight.
Jeepers.
But,
Sorry.
That's okay.
I have to ask you to wrap up.
Yep. She has visited my workplace to get me fired. She has gone to the local police because I shared her public arrest record. So please be careful, okay? Be careful
Again,
of the book
if you
banners.
could please wrap up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Larry Mandel, followed by Susanna Tingley, please.
Good evening. Larry Mandel, 54 Rome Street in North Kingstown. I'm here because I wanted to share some thoughts. I served on school boards in international schools in Hungary, Israel, and Indonesia as a U.S. diplomat for over 30 years. Plus, all four of my kids, when they were back in the States, attended public schools when we lived in the States, including in Massachusetts, Virginia, and here in Rhode Island. I have two kids who are currently elementary and middle school teachers in Fairfax County, Virginia. And when I served on school boards, our goal was always to do what's best for the kids. That was always our focus and our filter for everything we did. I don't care very much about labels, whether those labels apply to people or to educational programs. My concern as a parent, my concern as a school board member, is to make sure that kids learn information and facts, and that kids develop those essential skills that allow them to reason for themselves. These are crucial life skills. This is what I think schools are all about. I do believe that educators want to do the best for our kids. I think that theories of education will always change and evolve. We need to be open to that. Some of them will be successful, others will not be successful and will be changed. That's part of the way our educational process works and should work. So I just want to say thank you to our dedicated educators and administrators. I know your jobs are not easy. You're faced with many challenges, but I know you work hard and conscientiously in the interests of our children and our community, and I want to say thank you.
Thank you. Next is Susanna Tingley, followed by Peter Cornillin.
Hi, good evening. Susanna Tingley, 750 Hatchery Road, North Kingstown. I just have two things I want to speak quickly to. The first one, the proposed DEI survey is highly unreliable and should not be sent out. Any survey given to minors should include the following, and I know Bob Jones has shared some of this with you. Who has access to the data? Where will it be stored? When will the data be destroyed or retained for how long? Will an opt-out be given to parents? Who will distribute the what will the distribution method be? Will a neutral group be analyzing the data? The optional name needs to be eliminated from the survey. And reliability requires the respondent to understand the question and context. And most of the questions are very vague on the survey. And the high school students don't know enough, I think, about what you're asking them in these questions to expect the survey to give any reliable, actionable feedback. Secondly, on January 19th, the DEI subcommittee will interview Insight Education Group and Public Consulting Group, the two companies that bid on the $75,000 equity audit. They will vote and present their recommendation to the school committee on January 25th. The goal of these companies is to transform white privilege. These companies focus on understanding how white privilege operates and is maintained and how whiteness was created. Tools include framing and encouraging a willingness to act for racial justice. This is all directly on their website with suggestions of how to spend the ESSER money. If this equity audit is approved by the school committee, it will fundamentally change education. We do not need an out-of-state company to audit our schools. We need a school committee and an administration with leadership and a desire to do the work you were elected to do. Have you reviewed the SIT summaries, the analysis of survey work, the health and wellness reports, the affirmative action report, the required September report to the state on educational gaps? These are all required by law and your own North Kingstown School Committee policy. The district had an obvious drop in science scores. How about spending the $75,000 on new labs or addressing the ELA gender proficiency gap or enhancing libraries? You pay administrators over $2 million, many of whom hold doctorates and can do research and analysis. You have an HR director who should be doing the HR equity evaluation. With all the data you have, why would you pay an outside vendor to duplicate work that should have already been done by the administration? The schools committee should demand the administration do your job. No outsourcing of basic functions. Why are you focused on spending $75,000 when your own policy requirement for each school to address improvement has not yet been met by all schools? It seems that many of the SIT reviews are all looking for ESSER grant goals as their goals. We have all the data we need to improve our schools. The equity audit will cost $75,000, and then our kids are going to be hit even harder with more racist, anti-American, sexualized gender identity,
if you could please wrap up.
Pedophilia material. Every community member needs to reach out or call their principals, school committee members, town council members, and administration if you care about our kids.
Thank you. And I apologize, I can't figure out how to make that quieter. But, next is Peter Cornillan.
Yeah, I'm Peter Cornillan, 139 North Road, Saunderstown. First, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you. It seems to me that what those arguing against DEI efforts being undertaken by the school committee are missing is it is broader than an attempt to address racial, gender, ableness, and identification issues. It's also an effort to address how we treat one another in general. In a previous school committee meeting, I commented that I was proud of North Kingston High School for the scholastic training my daughter had received. After the meeting, my partner and I discussed my comments. She asked why I hadn't mentioned that our daughter is part Asian. I said that it was not part of the story I was telling, and that I was not aware of any racial issues she had had at school. My partner said she had these issues.
Could you speak up a little? It's hard to hear you. I'm sorry.
Sorry. She said that my partner said that my daughter had these issues. I asked for examples. She said our daughter had been called slant-eyed, among other names, and mocked for the food she liked. Those are just a minor set. I said, yes, kids can be cruel, excuse me, but they are cruel across the board. I was called four eyes, having worn glasses since I was 2, and I was very sensitive to this. Without my glasses, I felt quite vulnerable. My partner said, yes, but it's worse when you are a minority. I thought about this and eventually came to understand, and with that understanding came an aha moment. Yes, DEI is important as it relates to gender, race, ableness, and identity, but it's also directed at improving how we treat people in general. We've all been bullied, many of us take it, but that's not right. There's no good reason for this to be part of how we interact with one another. The bullying that has emerged related to DCI is a clear indication that intolerance and how people are dealing with it is a broad problem, not only in our community, but in the country as a whole. Although at the special town committee meeting 2 weeks ago, Mary Brimer repeatedly referred to Superintendent O'Shea as ogre. Although it is possible that this was due to either ignorance on her part or an intellect incapable of processing the proper pronunciation of Dr. O'Shea's name, my guess is that it was malicious. Name-calling, bullying, doesn't just happen in the school system. Mary Brimer is a member of the town council. The incredibly disruptive behavior related to the wearing of masks at several of the previous school committee meetings points to a lack of civility that is not conducive to the civil dialogue that is important as part of our democratic process. No, let me amend that. Civil dialogue is not only important to the process, it's critical. And yet, attempts to address this by augmenting the curriculum to expose issues of intolerance and to promote tolerance and acceptance will, I believe, be extremely helpful to our kids and ultimately to our society. This is not a near-term fix to a societal problem, but a carefully thought out and implemented approach to addressing important societal issues at a time
if you could
in the
please wrap up,
development
sir.
of our kids when they have a real long-term impact. And thanks again to the school committee and to the administration for dealing with all this in these trying times.
Thank you, sir. Next is Tim Conlon, followed by Izzy Montini.
Good evening. Tim Conlon, 140 Clinton Drive in Wickford.
What was the town, sir? I'm sorry.
140 Clinton Drive, North Kingston.
Thank you.
I said Wickford, but North Kingston, technically. Right. I want to thank you, Ms. Carroll, Attorney Carroll, for affording me leave to address you folks directly. As I'm guessing some of you know, I represent some of the young men who are involved in the Thomas issue. I appreciate the opportunity to speak directly to you with her leave, and I appreciate her, Attorney Carroll, and you collectively agreeing to supply access to information regarding the Thomas matter to my clients. The courts, the media reported that the courts, quote, ordered certain things to be produced, and although that's technically a correct statement, it would also be unfair to miss the opportunity to note that that was something that was done with your agreement, and that is very much appreciated. Certainly I'm capable of litigating and getting things, but resistance to getting to the truth is in no one's interest, and the fact that the board, the committee, and your legal counsel were prepared to agree to join in some effort to getting all of the cards on the table is, I think, very commendable, and again appreciated by myself and my clients, and speaks well towards, people talk about, terrible lawsuits, and obviously lawsuits are not pleasant for anyone, but the bottom line is that cooperation, getting to the heart of what's gone on, is in everyone's interest in terms of moving forward. In that regard, I also want to express my appreciation for your decision to release that report. I can't have been an easy decision for you, and I know there's a lot in there that people are not going to be particularly happy about, but trying to hide from the reality of the situation, again, is not in anyone's real interest if the goal is to move forward. So I have proffered certain information to you folks through Ms. Carroll, and we would be less than candid if we didn't recognize that there are some very distinct differences of understanding as to what transpired. I know that you have been advised that no one was aware that there was naked fat testing before 2021, and I've supplied documents through your attorney that suggest quite the contrary. Similarly, I know you've been told that this practice was ceased in 2018, and again, that is not the information that I have. But that's the point, really, isn't it? That if the information that we all are gathering isn't shared, it's very difficult to move forward. So as much as I can appreciate people's concerns about, quote, terrible lawsuits, and certainly...
If you could please wrap up, sir.
Certainly, we don't know where the future is, but to the extent that we're attempting to dialogue about this civilly, I think it's in everyone's interest. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next is Izzy Montini.
Hi, Izzy Montini, 70 Bethany Lane, North Kingstown. Regardless of disagreements on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or the stress of the ongoing investigation involving Aaron Thomas, we owe it to our students to adequately fund our top-notch performing North Kingstown schools. Not having a healthy budget will create issues such as a structural deficit, as money awarded to the district as a result of the pandemic will begin to run out. We also need to keep in time with the new technology and making sure equipment is up to date. I am also interested to see what capital funding the school will be awarded, as projects such as the new middle school and new roof for the high school will become more and more relevant. I am hoping that we can put aside political differences to do what's important, which is putting our students first. The students are the ones who are suffering from the lower budget, and we need to ensure that North Kingstown stays a top-performing school. I would also like to comment on how the Aaron Thomas investigation needs to be addressed within the high school. Everything that the students have heard, at least the ones I've spoken to, has come from the news, and our administration has not sent out any information at all. And I know this may be part of a legality issue, but at the very least, we owe it to our students to provide them with counselors and mental health services. This could be done by simply saying that anyone affected by this issue can go to guidance from like this hour to this hour, just so students know that their experiences are valid and that the school is making it their mission to take care of them. I also believe that because of these recent events, it would be a great time to finally address the Title IX policy. Title IX provides parents, students, teachers, and employees with a clear path to report sexual assault. Clearly, there was a problem here with a safe and apparent way to report sexual assault and harassment. So by making this policy more widely known and available, we can avoid any problems like this in the future and take care of them as soon as they are reported. Finally, I would like to remind everyone to please be respectful at these meetings and to each other. We are all working towards the same goals, which is doing what's best for students. And although sometimes we can disagree on how to get there, a productive dialogue in good faith is necessary to create change for both sides. If we want to be heard, we all need to do a lot of listening. Thank you, and happy holidays.
Thank you. Okay, so the last name I have is Ramona Messenger, please.
I'm going to repeat what I talked about on Monday night because I think it's very,
just state your name and address for the record, sorry.
Ramona Messenger, 437 Davitt Avenue in Jamestown.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'd like to repeat the speech I gave at the Town Council meeting because I think this is abundantly important that everybody knows that the North Kingstown curriculum framework is steeped in anti-American rhetoric, and I feel it's harmful and it must end. The Town Council and anyone, parents, teachers, anyone who is listening should understand that the term specifically culturally responsive education, is a Trojan horse for a hateful anti-American, anti-democratic political agenda. People should also know that the culturally responsive education and critical race theory are overlapping and mutually reinforce one another. North Kingstown Schools is fully on board with this anti-American agenda. It's coming directly from Rhode, and before that, the Federal Department of Education. It is disgusting to me as a parent and an educator to have to hear my son's English teacher pushing a political ideology onto students that is intimidating them by suggesting that their whiteness and their families are intrinsically bound to privilege. This line of thinking is not true, and it should not be allowed in schools. Students at NK are taught to continually reflect upon their implicit biases, their racism, and privilege. In fact, Jen Lima has taken it upon herself to lead the crusade in this sort of harassment and discrimination. Students are encouraged by a few radical teachers to dismantle the current systems of so-called inequities rooted in our country's history, cultures, and institutions. This is not public education, it's political indoctrination, and it is harmful to our communities as it propagates hate and division. Instilling this racially divisive ideology in our public schools should not be allowed. Instead, we need to investigate and audit all the money used for the DEI committee recommendations, any clubs and surveys used to overthrow and undermine U.S. history and culture. North Kingstown Schools is prioritizing spending on this so-called culturally responsive curriculum, otherwise known as CRT, and we need to stop it now as the hostility and division is growing out of control, and we cannot fund or should not fund a school district that preaches that America is structurally biased and an oppressive nation in need of fundamental transformation. That is simply not true, and we cannot allow this district or Providence or any district in Rhode Island to advance this further. Rather than treating every student as a unique individual entitled to equality before the law, this school committee would like tax dollars to purchase materials for a framework that divides us into inherently oppressor and oppressed groups.
If you could please wrap up, thank you.
And it should not be allowed to advance. This is a public school. It is not a platform, your specific political platform to push your specific political agenda.
Thank you. Okay, so having concluded citizens' comments, with unanimous consent of the committee, I'd like to move up one of the items that's lower on our agenda. That's just where we've been keeping it, but it's one of the more important things we need to do this evening, and that's a update on the status of the investigation and the investigation report, which is item 5F. Do I have unanimous consent to move that forward at this time? Okay. So first, let me explain that I have a statement that I'm going to read, and that this evening we are releasing a redacted version of the Phase 1 of the Olivero report regarding the Aaron Thomas situation. The redactions, I'll just mention, are simply to protect the names of people who came forward. They're not factual redactions. They're just that. It's being released this evening because the school department received an APA request that we are complying with, and we felt that it was appropriate to release it to anyone that wanted to have it, not just the organization that sent in the request. The report will be available on the school committee's website for download, if not now, this evening. So I'm going to read a statement that I prepared. So at the outset, the school committee colleagues, my school committee colleagues and I thank you for your patience as the investigations continue. The safety and well-being of our students remain our top priority. This has been a very challenging time for our community, and especially for the individuals and families that have been impacted. We thank everyone who has shared their story as part of this investigation, and we hear you. This issue came to the North Kingstown School Committee's attention on February 19th, 2021, when the superintendent placed Mr. Aaron Thomas on administrative leave. The administration and the school committee commissioned Attorney Matthew Olivero to conduct an independent and objective investigation concerning the complaints made by former students alleging inappropriate conduct on the part of Mr. Thomas. Mr. Olivero was instructed to determine if Mr. Thomas had violated any rules, regulations, policies, or laws. It's important to note that Mr. Thomas was placed on administrative leave by the school department at the direction of the superintendent on February 19th, 2021. The school committee voted to uphold this suspension and to approve the superintendent's recommendation to terminate Mr. Thomas effective at the conclusion of the school year, which is the earliest legally permissible date. However, on June 24, 2021, Mr. Thomas resigned without severance. The Phase 1 investigation report identifies facts that support the school department and committee's termination of Mr. Thomas. Mr. Olivero submitted his Phase 1 investigation report to the school committee on June 18, 2021. The Phase 1 report details the independent and objective investigation that Mr. Olivero conducted. After careful review of the investigation's findings and as a result of additional details becoming known, the school committee on November 6, 2021 authorized Mr. Olivero to conduct a second phase of the investigation. The school committee instructed Mr. Olivero to expand the scope of his independent investigation to determine who and when any school district administrator knew of the inappropriate manner in which Mr. Thomas conducted, quote, fat testing of students. Mr. Olivero has informed the school committee that the second phase of his investigation is expected to not be complete until late January 2022. It is not our intention this evening to review each part of the Phase 1 investigation report with you. The school committee has been briefed by Mr. Olivero, and we have read the Phase 1 report in great detail. We understand the gravity of some of the report's findings, and we understand that the report is disturbing. We understand what is in the Phase 1 report, and we will act accordingly. And as I mentioned, the school committee has authorized Mr. Olivero to expand the scope of this investigation. The school committee has taken the Phase 1 recommendations into account and has made and will continue to make changes based on those recommendations. Once we have the Phase 2 report containing the investigation's findings and recommendations, have been briefed by Mr. Olivero, and consider any other information that may come forward, the school committee will announce additional changes that it and the school department will implement to protect our students from an incident like this ever occurring again. Our process has been deliberative because it has to be. That is our legal duty. We understand that some people would have liked every aspect of this situation to have been resolved back in February. That was simply not possible. An independent, objective investigation was necessary, and we stand by the decision we made to authorize that investigation. The members of the school committee are very concerned about this situation, as we know you are. We are responsible for ensuring that all of the facts are uncovered and then taking action to strengthen the rules, regulations, and policies that are intended to protect the health and safety of all of the children entrusted to our school district. The changes forthcoming will be serious and adopted from best practices. I must add that it is important not to rush to judgment. In addition to the Phase 2 of our investigation, which is nearing completion, the North Kingstown School Department has conducted an investigation that was completed in July, and the Rhode Island Attorney General's Office is also conducting its own investigation. We do not yet know when that investigation will be completed. In conclusion, this school committee has taken decisive and required actions to remove Mr. Thomas and to get to the bottom of what occurred regarding his behavior. We will share the results of these investigations once completed with the parents and residents of our community, and we will take appropriate actions to protect our students and to ensure that an incident like this never again occurs in the North Kingstown Public Schools. So that is our statement. We don't really have much more to add beyond that. That report will be available, as I mentioned, for you to review in its entirety on our website. So, anyone else have anything they'd like to add? Okay. Then we'll continue with the remainder of our agenda. So, routine items. First, I need a motion to, first of all, I can disclose that no executive sessions were, I can disclose that no votes were taken in this evening's executive session of December 15th, 2021. I need a motion to seal the executive session minutes of December 15, 2021.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand, second from Mr. Mather. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Lima is going to abstain from that motion. That passes 3-0. Consent agenda. Do any members have any items that they would like to exempt from the consent agenda?
Personnel items.
Oh, I missed B. Sorry, I went too far. B1. Ms. Carroll, could you just speak briefly to this?
Yes. We do not have a severance agreement available for tonight for the school committee to approve. We do have a principal who has resigned, and I'm going to ask Dr. Auger if he'll say a few words. Sure. She has notified her staff, I believe, as of one day last week, and Dr. Auger has accepted her resignation, but there is no severance agreement. Dr. Auger?
Yes, so the resignation is from Dr. Caitlin Donahue, who's been the principal at Hamilton Elementary School since 2015. She's done incredible work for us. We wish her well. She is, moving on to be with her family right now. Her family is growing, and in fact, over the last few years, she has taken some time because of maternity leave. So she loves her career. She loves her work at Hamilton, and we love having her. But she feels compelled to, make this move at this point, and we wish her nothing but the best. She's done great for us. Hamilton Elementary has been an exceptionally high-performing school under her leadership, and we owe her a great deal of gratitude, and we wish her well. So,
I second that. So, sorry.
And I do want to add. She sent not only something to the faculty, but something to the Hamilton community today. Tomorrow morning, I will send something to the community with the same sentiments, but also to announce that we've had Mr. Terry Merkel. Mr. Merkel has been an administrator with the district for many years, and he has worked for us, with an exceptionally high-performing school at Wickford, and he has subbed over the years, the last few with us at Hamilton. He's going to stay on through the year, and in the spring, when the market is best for new hires for administrators, that is when we are going to have a full process. With the same kind of protocol that we normally have, that includes administrators, teachers, school committee, parents, in the process of selecting a new principal for the upcoming school year. So, thank you.
Thank you. And I think Mr. Mather?
I just wanted to echo part of what Dr. Auger said about Dr. Donahue. She started in 2015, the same year that my son started kindergarten at Hamilton. And I worked with her for 3 years as a PTO president at Hamilton, and she continues to be an amazing person, an amazing principal, and it was really a true pleasure to work with her and to have my kids at Hamilton during her tenure there.
And I think we all would wish her the absolute best. I am going to just, as a formality, ask for a motion to table item B1. I have a motion from Ms. Lima, second from, second Mr. Mather. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Now, consent agenda. Any items anyone would like to exempt from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion from Mr. Mather, second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. On the high school program of studies, I'm going to lead off here for a minute. I want to thank the administration for the presentation. It's excellent work. One thing I noted, and this is, I'm going to be really frank, we had some of the people who usually work on our agenda on vacation, and the program of studies wasn't attached in the public agenda, and it didn't go out to the public. And we usually don't like to approve something that people didn't have an opportunity to comment on. So I think the best thing to do in that situation would be I think there's plenty of time to approve it still if we kicked it one more meeting, right? So I don't think there'll be any changes to it unless, any of us have any objections, which I didn't hear at the time of the presentation. I think it is an excellent proposal, but we just, I don't like approving things that people haven't seen. So just for that reason, I'd ask for a motion to table that, and we'll take that up at probably our next meeting. I have a motion from Ms. Lima, a second from Ms. Hildebrand. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. So we'll sort of take that as a first read without a vote, basically. So for unfinished business, we have Mrs. King is out this evening. We don't really have much report on school.
On A, B, and C.
Yep, school budget for A, B, or C. So now we're reaching item D, which is the school committee approval of DEI subcommittee recommended survey. Ms. Lima, since this is your subcommittee, I think it would be best if you could speak and do some explanations, and then we'll discuss.
Yep, so I want to give a little background on this because it's not...
Before we do that, let's get a motion to approve it, and then we'll discuss. I'd like to have a motion on the table that we're discussing. Okay. So if I could get a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion, Ms. Hildebrand. Second, Mr. Lima, and now discussion.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Mather. I'm looking at Mrs. Lima, and yes, Mr. Mather, sorry.
Okay, so I just want to give a little background on this just to bring people up to speed. So it was discussed at the August 18th meeting when the DEI subcommittee met that we should prioritize our focus while we work through the RFP process for a district-wide equity audit. It was agreed at that meeting that it was important that we got student input on that. At that meeting, we discussed developing a questionnaire or survey to get that student input. At that meeting, it was decided that Angela Boyce-Claire, who is the faculty advisor for the Racial Equity Alliance, would bring that to that group at the high school and ask them to gather that information. So over the next several months, from August until now, Ms. Boyce-Claire worked with administration to make requested changes to the survey that the REA students had created in order to gain the necessary approval for it to go out. So between August and November, they worked on making some changes. So in November, I was asked by Dr. Morse whether the survey was being sent out on behalf of the REA or the DEI. All previous communication between that had been that it was going to be sent out on behalf of the REA. I wasn't sure why she was asking me that, and I take full responsibility for this, but instead of asking her why, I told her to send it out on behalf of the DEI, figuring that if we sent it out on behalf of the REA, people would say that we were using them as cover. So Dr. Morse asked who the question should go to, and I told her to include my email along with Angela's so that Angela didn't have to field any questions regarding the survey alone, because let's face it, we all know this is a contentious subject. Shortly after that...
You're talking really fast, and could you slow down a little bit?
Sorry. Shortly after that, an email went out from Dr. Morse to the parents of the North Kingstown student body, informing them that the survey would be going out. So the survey was optional and can be taken anonymously if desired. Shortly after the email from Dr. Morse went out, the survey was put on hold and was never distributed to the student body. I think it's important to note that between Ms. Boyce-Claire and myself, we received approximately 6 requests for copies of the questions and 3 opt-outs. That's based on a student body of approximately 1,300 families. So, as part of its charge, the DEI Advisory Subcommittee is supposed to report back to the North Kingstown School Committee with its findings and its recommendation. Asking the REA students to gather the information, I believe, is consistent with that charge. I don't believe that sending out the survey in our name, their name, or whatever is inconsistent with the fact that we're an advisory committee only. We're not taking any policy action by sending out a survey. The other thing is no other survey that goes out to students at the high school requires school committee approval before it goes out. And this does happen regularly. What makes this survey any different? I believe it's a subject matter. So I would respectfully ask that this committee determine that surveys like this, meaning not RISS or SurveyWorks or those that are administered in conjunction with state agencies, do not require school committee approval. Only the approval of the administration of the building where the survey is being conducted, which this one had. Otherwise, it's my opinion that any survey that goes out to the student body needs to come before this committee. That means surveys regarding homecoming dances, prom court, who the student's favorite teacher is, et cetera, et cetera. And those go out all the time. Ms. Finkelstein referenced a survey that's going out this week. We can't differentiate based on who is sending the survey or what the subject matter is. Finally, to address questions of the effectiveness and its reliability, I'd like to point out 2 things. One is that the survey that was prepared to send out bears very little resemblance to the one that the students originally drafted. It's been watered down to avoid offense to the point where it's no longer recognizable. The second is that the purpose of the survey never was to mine for hard data or to get solid statistics. It was to get a feel for where the students' hearts and heads were at. Depending on what happens tonight, we may not get to that. But I think we've certainly given the students a glimpse of where this district is at when it comes to actually discussing equity. So I'd like to table this vote or amend the vote to say that the survey does not require school committee approval.
Okay, well, we've got, you can make a motion to amend our motion anytime you want. Anyone can do that. So if you want to make a motion to amend, you can do that.
Okay.
So you'd say, I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion to be, and then say what you want
So
to say.
I'd like to amend the motion to say that the survey does not require school committee approval.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
So, Robert Rules question.
Yes.
If there is a... I don't know if that's an actual amendment the way it was presented. But I think the original...
There was a motion to approve the survey.
Right. You had made a motion to approve the survey. So now you're amending the motion to approve the survey to say we're not approving the survey.
You're right. It's sort of a separate, and I would caution that I hear what you're saying and where you're going, but the question of whether or not surveys need to be approved by the school committee is not on our agenda this evening.
Okay.
This survey is.
Okay.
So I think that's a problem with what you're trying
So
to
I would
say.
request that we table this then.
Okay, so then I would say, well, we have a motion on the table with a second.
Okay.
I don't think you can you motion to table after you do that?
You made a motion to, well...
We could unanimously consent to rescind the motion and withdraw the motion. And then
the motion in the second and then ask...
And then you could make a motion to table.
Okay.
Okay, so do we have unanimous consent to withdraw the motion on the table? Yes?
Yes.
No objection. Okay, hearing no objection, now you can make a motion to
I would like to make
table.
a motion to table this.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to table item, I've lost my place. We are at 5D1.
Okay, so I'll second the motion.
And now we have a second.
But I have a question.
And we have discussion, so we can discuss a motion to table.
Can I make a point?
There's
no discussion
on the motion.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, oh yeah, you're right.
All right.
Okay, nope, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so then we would vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is tabled. Okay, so no action is taken on that item. So next, substitute staffing rates.
Okay, thank you. This is an issue that's becoming more and more pronounced, this year, particularly as COVID rates seem to be rising right now in our state. We are noticing that, our staffing at all levels, transportation, teaching assistants, teachers, we're really in need, and we're stressing out our teachers and our current staff who kind of fill in on the moments where they should be doing planning or other work like that. So we have seen a real uptick in this district in terms of stressing out the staff that are in the buildings to do coverages. Principals are doing coverages, just about everybody who can. In some cases, we've changed schedules for students in the day because we just can't get to everything because maybe the person who's going to be doing PE has got to cover another class somewhere else, and we're just kind of doing that kind of prioritizing. So we've looked at the rates of pay for substitutes that we have. We have always been competitive, and as of July 2020, we were right in the middle of the mix. Most districts were somewhere between about $75 and $100, and I think North Kingstown was around 90 in that group. So, and we have in the past, whether it's been for teachers or TAs or other rates, have done that kind of competitive, moving up to meet the demand. Doesn't always work out that way because there's a lot of things that go into a person's decision about whether they want to sub in a district. A lot of times it's, my kids are in this district, I want to sub here. I'm not really interested in going to another district, even if they're offering a higher rate to be a sub. But this is not a normal time. The competition for any job at the moment is fierce, and I feel compelled to try everything that we can and to raise our rates. Currently, we are at $90 a day for a sub, whereas neighboring districts are moving in the direction of higher than that. There are some at 100, there are some at 125. Our neighbor to the south, South Kingstown's at 165. Narragansett this is not on the sheet that I gave to you, but we found out today they're at 150 right now. And these are all adjustments that have been made recently because of COVID and because of the market right now. Clearly, not as many people are interested in subbing, probably because they're concerned about getting out and about in schools, but also there's just this incredible demand for labor, and it's affecting us just like it's affecting every other industry in the country. So in talking with Mrs. King, who could not be here tonight, and Mr. Lally, I am proposing tonight that we move that number to $125. That will not be as much as our neighbor to the north or the south, but I think it sets us up competitively. And just so you know, when we set something like this in place, it may seem like, $35. That doesn't seem like a lot. When you multiply it by the number of subs we need in our district, it's an extraordinary amount. It can be in the range of hundreds of thousands of dollars to the district to be able to do this. And whatever the school committee decides on tonight about this, I will come back to the school committee in 2 months, probably at the end of February, and let you know how it's going. Because I'm concerned that we may set an extraordinarily higher rate, but then not see any appreciable difference in the number of subs that are coming out for us. So that's a concern. And I know Mrs. King shares that concern. But I do feel we need to try something, and we need to be competitive, particularly if our neighbors to the north and south are, at this point, almost 50 or 60% higher than we are right now. So I think that's important that we make this move. And to pay for this, the problem is creating the solution. The problem is that we're not able to fill enough positions at the moment, and that's creating a need for subs. So the money is there. It's the same money we would have used to pay the people who are not filling the position. So I'm going to play Mrs. King here for a second and explain that in a little more detail. So we have a budgeted item which is called breakage, which is essentially when positions aren't filled or that they're budgeted for. As Dr. Auger said, the money to pay for this increase is literally caused by the problem. So because we can't find substitutes, money that we have budgeted for subs is not being spent. Therefore, the proposal would be to use the money that we're not spending on the substitutes to try to get the substitutes. I would propose that if we do this, and I don't think you'd have any objection to this, that we specifically set not just your review in February, but I'd like to say that this is only for till the end of the year. Yes, and that's in the proposal too. Okay, I just want to make that clear. So I'll make a motion that we increase the substitute staffing rates to $125 per day until the end of this calendar year, with the understanding that Dr. Auger will come back to us in February and let us know how it's going, and we may even, go back or make an adjustment sooner than that if necessary. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second from Ms. Hildebrand. Okay. So now we're playing Robert's rules again. So that is a motion on the table with a second, so you can make an amendment. Your mic's not on if you.
Sorry. I'd like to amend that motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make the request or the proposal be 145. I don't think 125 is enough of an increase based on what our neighboring districts are paying and based on the effect that the substitute shortage is having. And if the increase isn't really going to make that much of a difference, we'll find out. And the other thing is the amount of money that we're paying in overages for teacher coverage to cover is pretty substantial. We're paying basically $744 a day. That's what we've paid year to date. I think this is a serious need. Our children aren't getting their specials. Our teachers are overburdened. I think we need to be as aggressive as possible.
Okay. Is there a second?
So I will second, just so we can...
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, so now we can have discussion on the amendment. Now I'm going to put on my Robert's Rules hat, which I failed at on a couple things. Thank you, Attorney Carroll. My response to that, as we discuss it, would be, I hear what you're saying, but there's a lot of factors, as I talked to the administration and Mrs. King I have had some discussions about it. There are a lot of factors that go into substitute staffing. It's not just the rate. You tend to get people, you're not going to be pulling in subs from very far away from North Kingstown. People tend to sub in the towns they live in or very nearby.
Yep.
So we have a limited pool to begin with. We can't magically increase the pool of available people. I do think that the rate can have an effect, but I'm not confident that jumping it up that much right now will make that much of a difference. I support the 125 number, but I'm hesitant to make that drastic of a change at this point.
So the average rate for the districts within our area, within like a 20-mile zone, is 135. So we're not even matching the average rate for the districts within our area if we go to 125.
Okay. Any other?
So I have a question.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Jake.
I have another question about our surrounding rates. Do we know if those are also temporary rates that are going to?
Yeah, those rates they've set for COVID, and I would imagine that they're doing the same thing that we're doing, looking at how effective they are. The granddaddy of them all is West Warwick at $200, and they did say that they had a pretty good impact in the first few weeks that this came out. It's waned a little bit, but they're still happy with the results. But that's more than double what we're currently doing, and no one else is doing that. I gave you some data on the form, and there's a couple of things I want to correct. One is East Greenwich I listed at 145. That is for their long-term sub rate, but their regular rate is 100. Still $10 more than we are. But and we didn't have Narragansett at the time. We do now. That is at 150. So if you look at South Kingstown at 165, Narragansett at 150. That's the neighborhood, and trying to compete with that. But getting to 125, if you plug that into the remainder of the year, and the second half of the year tends to be heavier for the need for subs than the first half of the year. You're dealing with winter time and sickness and all that, but you're also dealing with people using more personal days in the second half of the year than they were in the first half of the year. So what we've already spent now isn't just simply times 2. It's probably going to be more in the spring. So we're already looking at, with 125, moving the needle somewhere between, I'm going to say, $150,000 and $200,000 that it could mean to the district. And you just do the math. I mean, if we move it up twice that much, that's what it's going to cost us overall. And I think we have some power to be flexible here, to look at it after. It's hard to put it back after you've just done it. Yeah. A lot of people are going to be upset with you.
It's a lot easier to go up again than it is to go down again.
So, I knew that tonight would probably have this exact conversation. What's the right number? And I just kind of plugged in 125 because that sounded doable. I would hope that going to 135 or 145 or higher than that would mean more. I don't know that for sure. We're just going to have to see.
I just think we have kids in elementary schools who haven't had library in 4 weeks because we don't have staff. That's not good for the kids. That's not good for the teachers. If I am a potential substitute and you're asking me, you're telling me that you're going to pay me $10 more a day to be in North Kingstown and I can get $30 more a day to go to Narragansett or South Kingstown, it's a no-brainer. I know that the argument is that these positions are filled by local stay-at-home moms in the area, but to drive to South Kingstown or Narragansett is not that much farther than to be in North Kingstown. I think we need to recognize that we need to pay what we need to in order to get these people in our district.
So, Dr. OJ, are we talking about a 6-hour day, 8-hour day? How many hours a day does
generally speaking, it comes up to 6.5 hours.
Okay. So 6.5 hours at $125 is $19 an hour, $19.25 an hour.
In some cases where subs are in for a week or two, it's probably going to include some time after school.
So it could potentially go to higher
corrections
than
and planning
hours.
And that sort of thing too. So it's hard to quantify it just on those 6.5 hours.
Okay, so it's possible for some it could be an 8-hour day.
It could be, yeah. Depending on the circumstances that they have and what they need to do to prep.
But somebody who's working an 8-hour day and somebody who's working a 6.5-hour day is getting the same.
They're getting the same daily rate, yeah.
Okay, and I mean, in my mind, I think there's a difference between retaining the subs that we already have, because I think that that's definitely an issue, right? Like Mrs. Lima just said, there are subs that might go to another district or be more likely to sub in a different district on a particular day if there's openings in both districts. They want to drive, they're going to go to the higher paid one. But also recruiting new subs into the pool in North Kingstown. So I guess my question is, have we thought that through also? Are there additional ways for us to recruit more people?
Well, we use an agency to help us with that, And, I think we need to look at, what they're doing to help us with that. I know, they're probably as capable as anybody. That's their business to try to do that. With this change, I will make a formal announcement to all, my email list about the change. So hopefully there may be some parents in the district or who may know somebody, say, you know what, they just raised the rate over here. This would be a good time to get on board,
Yeah.
And so it may spur the idea for some people.
Because you're talking about additional need for substitutes as the COVID continues, the winter happens.
Right.
And the only way that you're going to fill additional roles is to bring more people into the group of subs.
I agree. I think we need to aggressively promote, A, the fact that we need people, and B, the fact that we've raised our rate, not just through the staffing agency, but through our own social network, through the North Kingstown website, and say, hey, look, we need you. Come be a part of our team,
And I agree with Jen Lima in that if this is meant to incentivize people to substitute in our district, there are only 3 towns on this list that have rates that are less than that. Every other town is equal to or above that. And so if we're incentivizing or trying to incentivize substitute teachers to come to our district, I don't think anything incentivizes people more than money.
So I'd support going to 135. I think 140, I don't want to get a bidding war. I think 145, it's just such a huge jump. I mean, that's just, so I would rather be a little more incremental. That's my 2 cents.
I just want to remind you that we're paying $744 a day in coverage when we're not utilizing subs. So you're talking about a difference of $10 per day versus $700 a day when we don't have enough subs and we have to have teachers covered. That's how much we paid out per day.
Yes.
Our COO isn't here tonight.
Right.
And I think she'd be weighing in on this.
I know that is true.
She has a whole survey on subs and the fact that, we might just be giving the people we have more money and the fact that we go through an agency. So I'm going to recommend that either you accept the superintendent's recommendation or we table it until we have Mary King available. Because she does have more information. I know she's done a whole survey and everything.
Yeah, our next school committee meeting's not until after January, and I think this problem is only getting worse.
Yeah.
I feel like if we don't address the issue right now, whether it be 125 or 135 or 145, I don't think we can wait until the next school committee meeting when there are kids, including my kids, that are
and Mrs. King knows we're having this conversation. She's prepped me. I mean, I'm not going to speak about it as well as she will, but she knows that we may be talking about a higher rate than what we're proposing. So I'm probably doing a terrible job of passing along what she would say, but I'm trying my best, everybody.
Say your part that you just
So
said.
I asked for the year-to-date cost that we have incurred for teacher coverage, which is when a teacher covers for the class because a substitute isn't available. And year-to-date from now through, from the beginning of the year through November 27th, we've spent a total of, I'm going to use round numbers, $38,000. So there's been 51 school days. So if you divide 38,000 by 51, that means we paid out $745 a day to teachers to cover classes. So we're paying out $745 a day
for the teacher.
We're not paying one teacher that much. We're paying in the aggregate. It comes up to about that much a day.
But that's the per cost day. That's the per day cost. And we're talking about a difference of $10 a day here for the substitute. So even if you would have to have a lot of substitutes to even equal that $745.
So the point I would like to make is that I don't question your math, but when
you might want to.
when you are looking deeper into numbers like that, and Mrs. King has a very good reason for not being here tonight. I just want to make that very clear.
I know she would.
Without her being able to chime in and give you additional detail, I hear her in the back of my head saying something that would say, you're right, but.
And I understand that, but we're quibbling over $10 a day, and we're talking about kids and teachers who are stressed out to the max, and I just can't believe that we can't say they're not worth
it's $10 per day per person times a lot of subs. So, and you're talking 20. So Okay,
if
so
money really isn't going to make a difference, we'll find out because the people aren't going to be coming and we won't be spending it to begin with.
and my point is we can go up, but we can't go down. So we've got a motion to amend on the table. I don't think there's any more discussion to be had. Let me know if you do. So I think we should vote. So to be clear on what you're doing, a vote in the affirmative on this motion doesn't approve it yet. It just changes the motion to be 145, and then we'd vote again.
Okay.
If you vote no, you're saying, I want to vote on the 125 number. That means the amendment would fail. So we'll call the vote. So, yep.
I'm very sorry. Can you repeat that?
Yes. Okay. So we have a motion to amend on the table. That means that if you vote in the affirmative, you have not actually made the approval of the item. You are just saying, I want to change what we are going to vote on to be $145 a day. If you vote no on the motion to amend, it fails, and then we vote on $125 a day. Did you follow that? Okay. So all those in favor of the motion to amend?
Aye.
3 yes. I'm no. I told you why. So it passes. Okay. Now, having passed, we now have a motion that has been amended, which is to increase the substitute staffing rate to $145 per day. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
No. I've explained why. I will up it. I just won't go that high. Okay. And I'm a no. So the motion passes 3-1. Okay. Next, we just have special reports. There's a disposal notification. Does anyone have any questions there? If not, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. I have a motion from Mr. Mather, second from Ms. Lima. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.